It is West of Everest. I'm Lee Benson. He is Grant Benson. And this show is available wherever you get your podcast, but predominantly available on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. If you follow the show on Apple Podcasts, if you follow the show on Spotify, might as well subscribe to the show on YouTube as well. Make it a clean sweep across the board. Well, now that we've reached the college football offseason, it's the time of the year when our release schedule is, well, inconsistent. Let's just put it that way. That's, of course, been the case the last few weeks, and we know that. But hey, we're back today, and there's so many things to talk about within the world of Oklahoma football. There's three main topics we're going to hit on, and we're going to focus on a few things, hit around the edges of a couple of other topics. But, of course, the biggest topic of late is the news of DeMarco Murray's departure for the NFL. Just excellent news for everybody involved. Also, Jay Valai out of here, poached by the Buffalo Bills. And if you know me, you better believe that I want to talk about the Owen Heinecke situation, the eligibility thing. We have not been on to talk about the latest news that he was denied by the NCAA. And as time has gone on, I think Grant has also gotten more interested in talking about this as well. So that'll be interesting. I've been absolutely flabbergasted by the media coverage of this story and how it's been portrayed publicly. So we'll talk about that towards the end of the show because some of you may not care about that, may not be interested in that. So we'll save that for the end, but I promise we got a lot on it if you are interested. Aside from those topics, we'll fill in the gaps with everything else that's happened since our last episode. So let's get things going. Grant, happy belated Valentine's Day. What's going on?
Thanks. Happy Valentine's Day. Sweet. I know everybody. Yeah, I know you went and saw Wuthering Heights with your significant other yesterday, as everybody in the Twin Cities apparently was. A 50-degree day yesterday.
Really?
In February. Yeah, it was crazy. There was something in the water here. But yeah, it's good to be back. I'm here. I'm very, very happy to be talking about just genuinely great news. A situation that has resolved itself, and I think in the best way humanly possible. The Kansas City Chiefs have resolved a significantly large problem that the University of Oklahoma football team found themselves in by poaching DeMarco Murray, probably pound for pound the most overpaid coach in college football, a complete failure as a running back coach in his tenure at Oklahoma. And I cannot believe, but a running back coach who I think arguably genuinely lost OU games in his tenure at Oklahoma. That is if that is if you buy the notion that he was largely responsible for the running back rotations, from which I understand he probably was. So, and the best thing is, man, we're going to find out pretty much right away next year.
Right.
So this is excellent news, and it's a situation too where you didn't have to have like the optics and the heartburn and the hurt feelings of firing an Oklahoma legend that people like. So it's like, all things considered, OU gets to move on. They get to go get but frankly, whoever they hire is going to be an upgrade. There's no way that it's not. I think DeMarco Murray and the Oklahoma football program was oil and water. It did not work. Nothing that he did. I would say he pushed the right buttons over the course of like a 7 or 8 game tenure once in his career. And that also happened to be a season where OU went 6-7. So, I don't know, man. I'm very happy that he is no longer on the staff. As far as as I said over and over, I know Joe John Finley was kind of the whipping boy, the guy who was easy to throw under the bus. But it was actually DeMarco Murray who was the biggest problem. Because that position group is frankly just way more important than tight end. And so I'm throwing a party. I got party favors over here. I'm blowing horns. This is a very, very good thing for the program. And we don't have to have the crappiness of firing him. It just kind of, much like I wish Ohio State would have done this 2 years ago, taken DeMarco Murray off of OU's hands. Andy Reid and the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm going to send them in edible arrangements. Thank you.
So, Grant, off the top rope, right off the bat on it. And I love it. And you hit on a lot of stuff I was going to hit on. And you're right. So I was going to bring up the Ohio State thing. That Kansas City does what, in hindsight, we wished Ohio State would have done, a couple of off seasons ago, and just poached them. And I said at the start that this is good news for everybody, and that includes DeMarco Murray for the reasons you mentioned. Oklahoma didn't have to fire him. He can leave Oklahoma with still hopefully being in good graces with the school, because as you've said a million times on the show, he's a terrific player. This has nothing to do with him as a player. This has everything to do with him as a coach. You all understand that. Just wanted to point that out. But also, he goes to Kansas City, and their running back situation last year was kind of a mess. When Kareem Hunt's like your best guy, and he's like feels like he's like our age, which we're like, he's not that old, but he's definitely like early to mid 30s.
Oh, he's a full vet of the NFL. Yeah.
And Pacheco can never stay healthy, so I guess Murray will fit right in well with that. But he's going to Kansas City, and Eric Bieniemy's going back to the Chiefs, and Eric Bieniemy just spent a year as the running backs coach with the Bears, and the Bears running backs, DeAndre Swift and Kyle Monangai, were excellent this past season. And how much does that have to do with Eric Bieniemy? How much does that is to do with Ben Johnson's offense? Probably a little bit of both. Point being is that Murray's going to go there. Bieniemy knows how to be a running backs coach. That's like his background as an offensive coordinator. So Murray can just kind of fit in there, and whatever happens is probably going to be fine. So great news for him. And here's the thing, like, and you're not doing this, I'm not doing this. I'm not going to sit here and do the thing where, and we aren't going to do this because you already talked and I know where you stand. We're not going to pretend on this show like this is a big loss for Oklahoma, because it's not. Like, Murray's time at Oklahoma has resulted in a running back room that has underperformed expectations, and Oklahoma's running backs have been in the bottom tier in important SEC statistical categories for the last 5 seasons. And we went over all of those damning numbers in our last show. And I can recap it real quick. And I think it's important because we always want to show our work. That's the thing, is I don't like when people, rip on things, but then don't back it up. And so we want to back it up because DeMarco Murray, he deserves us backing it up, just so you guys have the information as well. And so just real quick, over the last 5 seasons, when comparing Oklahoma's running backs to the rest of the SEC, OU's top 2 leading rushers each season have finished outside of the top 20 of SEC running backs on average. Only 5 teams have been worse than Oklahoma during that time period in the last 5 years. 10 SEC teams have been better than OU. In the last 5 seasons, Oklahoma has only had 3 running backs finish in the top 20 in the SEC for total rush yards in a season. Only Vanderbilt has had fewer running backs finish in the top 20 in the SEC in total rushing yards in a season during that time period. All the while, Oklahoma's running back recruiting on paper has been excellent compared to the rest of the SEC. According to the 247 composite recruiting rankings, only Alabama, LSU, and Texas have recruited better than Oklahoma in the last 5 seasons at running back. Oklahoma's running back recruits on paper has been on par with Georgia, and also better than Texas A&M, Tennessee, Florida, Missouri, Ole Miss, Auburn. All of those schools have all seen more running back production in the last 5 years than Oklahoma. Those are the numbers. They're not good for DeMarco Murray. And Brent Venables and Jim Nagy are going to have to try really, really hard to find a replacement running back coach that can do worse than that production over the last 5 years, in my opinion. So when you say that whoever they hire is going to be an upgrade, based on those numbers, it's going to be hard not to be an upgrade at Oklahoma.
Yeah, I think the bottom line is DeMarco Murray may be a really good coach, not at the college level. He's just not. He has not been a good coach at this level. He has not had a single guy that he has recruited from high school who has turned into anything at all. Arguably his best high school recruit he's ever had is Xavier Robinson, a guy who cannot stay healthy, a guy who we've never seen him in the first half of a season ever. So it's been. Go ahead. Are you going to say Javante Barnes?
No, I'd say that you said arguably, which is the good way to put it, because you could also argue him or Gavin Sawchuk. And I actually have, and we can hit on
6 games of Gavin Sawchuk.
That's the thing. It's to be more precise, none of his running back recruits, DeMarco Murray's, ever turned out to be anything consistently good. Keyword consistently. And so I decided, hey, let's do positives and negatives of DeMarco Murray. Positives. On paper, really good recruiter. That's
End of list.
It's about it. Negatives. Has not developed any of those good recruits into consistently good running backs. Again, mentioned Gavin Sawchuk. He's the closest. But again, the key word consistently. Sawchuk had one good bowl game and an excellent back half of the 2023 season. Aside from that, he's been irrelevant, or he was irrelevant at Oklahoma.
He had Sawchuk had 2 good bowl games. He was good in that Alamo Bowl where they lost to Arizona.
Well, that's part of the back half of the 2023 season.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, the Cheez-It Bowl though. We'll always have the Cheez-It Bowl where 2 true freshmen DeMarco Murray recruits both ran for over 100 yards and got us all excited about like, oh gosh, this is like the future. Next season, neither of those Sawchuk saw the field in the second half of the season, but remember going into 2023, we were all excited. Like, I think OU's run game is going to be really good. Like, they have a ton of experience on the offensive line coming back. We saw kind of what like Barnes and Sawchuk can do sharing the backfield in one game where they both get over 20 carries. And it's like they both had, in my opinion at the time, like pretty interesting, like contrasting styles, and was so excited about it. And then first half of the 2020, it was just, I was gobsmacked just as what was going on. And then the whole Tawi Walker of it all that season still, and that's what radicalized me, that whole thing. And I think since then, because Tawi Walker has gone on and has had success in other programs and has been a good soldier has been a good teammate, I think it's always going to be interesting because Tawi Walker, Oklahoma does not beat Texas in 2023 without Tawi Walker, who, if you go back and watch that game, he was terrific in that game in like all aspects. He dropped a touchdown pass. That was it. But other than that, ran tough, did all of the dirty work, did exactly what you want to do. And then we don't see him 2 weeks later against UCF. It comes out that he was probably serving like an in-team suspension or something like that. And there's been circumstantial evidence since then that it was him and Murray essentially were butting heads and got in a tiff. And from what we know about DeMarco Murray as a coach, it sounds like he is very difficult to play for. He is a demanding guy. It sounds like he's a big a-hole as a coach. And I just
it's all hearsay.
Yeah, it's hearsay, but there's a lot of people who will go out and say that. I mean, there's people who cover the team who are now saying he's a hard guy to play for, coaches people hard. And so
we don't even need that part though to show all the negatives. Sorry, go ahead.
Sure, yeah. Well, but what I'm saying is I think, and this is me editorializing, I don't want to say this because it's gone, it's in the rearview mirror now, but to me, there were times where it felt like DeMarco Murray was always trying to prove a point to himself. Like, this is me, this is my room, and I am making that and that's how I always felt about the Tawi Walker situation. And Sawchuk was terrific in the back half of that year. Tawi Walker was the best running back on that team. He's better than Gavin Sawchuk. I think their careers after this have played out and have proved that. And I like Sawchuk, but I think Sawchuk's last 6 or 7 games of 2023, I think was the product of his running style, his ability, as like a long strider, a guy when he gets out into space, he can run away from people. And I thought that was mixed with the sort of the annual, at the time, Bill Bedenbaugh's offensive line, like really rounding into form and playing well. And that's one of the things that, if I'm on a tangent here, that kind of bugs me about the fan base right now, talking about how like the offensive line has been bad ever since like Venables got here. That's not true. It was terrific in 22 and 23. They protected the passer well. They opened up running lanes. It's been pretty bad the last 2 years. But I don't think DeMarco Murray has contributed to any success that Oklahoma has had in the last 4 or 5 seasons whatsoever.
So I'm going over the list of the negatives and brought up, and I'll come back to quickly on Tawi Walker. You mentioned him, brought him up. Might as well keep it going. I mean, since he left Oklahoma, he's played for 2 schools, which that's kind of interesting that he transferred once, transferred again. But at those 2 schools, what was that? Cincinnati and Wisconsin, Cincinnati. He has been more productive. Tawi Walker has been more productive the last 2 seasons than any Oklahoma running back has been the last 2 seasons. And also on top of that, Hollywood Smothers transferred to NC State. Since then, he's only averaged more than 6 yards per carry the last 2 seasons, scored 12 touchdowns, and he'll be a focal point of the Texas offense next year. So cool. cool that he was also in Oklahoma's backfield. So that's a pretty big negative. But back to the recruiting. The recruiting's been good on paper. So Gavin Sawchuk he's been 4-star running backs that Murray has recruited. This is according to the 247 Sports Composite. Javonte Barnes is the other one. Taylor Tatum, which I know that in some services he was a 5-star, and Torrey Blaylock. So Javonte Barnes, the other 4-star. We talked about Gavin Sawchuk already. Javonte Barnes, we all know about him. Murray in Oklahoma force-fed Javonte Barnes to us for 3 years. And in 2025, Barnes effectively chose to stop playing in order to redshirt, allegedly.
Do we know where he's going? Did Javonte Barnes go anywhere else?
Yes. I want to say he's going somewhere in the SEC.
Oh, Kentucky. He's going to Kentucky. Yeah.
So that's Javonte Barnes. That's the guy that was force-fed to us. Taylor Tatum, again, I know a 5-star in at least one service. I thought, definitely the most raw talent of the 4-star players that Murray recruited. Didn't do anything in 2 years, and now he's at Michigan, and he might be playing defense come September. So there's that guy. And Torrey Blaylock, he did show a little bit of promise early on in the year, got injured in 2025. I think it's still too early to tell with Torrey Blaylock, but it doesn't matter because Murray's not going to be around to try to develop him anyways. So we'll see if somebody else can develop him. I know that you're a little lower on Blaylock. I still think he can. I don't think he's going to be like some elite player. I still think he can be a good back on the team. But still, there's still time to tell on Torrey Blaylock. So those are the evidence of his recruiting of like, hey, these are good recruits on paper. Can't develop them. You hit on the running back rotations. 2023 was obviously the biggest issue. And also throw in the fact that he was trying to force feed us Marcus Major for a large portion of the first part of that season. That was driving us up a wall in 2023. So that's my list of negatives about DeMarco Murray. Far, far, far outweighs the positives, unfortunately.
Yeah. And frankly, the last 2 seasons, the running back room has just been bad. Not a lot of good players in it. Period. And I think going into this next season, which, he's, and it's a thing. You can call it the coaching staff or whatever, but Joe John Finley largely just got fired because the tight end room was bad. He couldn't bring in good players, couldn't keep them there. And you look at the running back room, and I think after what OU did in the tight end room and the transfer portal, which I think they've done a pretty good job of improving that room. I think going into the 2026 season, the running back room is far and away, clearly, the worst group on the team. And there you go. That's his legacy.
Let's see. Come on. Trying to read. So I put on the West of Evers Facebook page a couple of days ago or yesterday, just thoughts, what you guys want to talk about. And we got a decent amount of comments about DeMarco Murray. So I just want to read some of those right now. Longtime listener, Shane says, the Murray departure was overdue. I'm kind of glad he left on his own terms because I want former players to have a good relationship with their alma mater. Okay, fair enough.
Agreed.
Yep, I think you're right about that, Shane. Peyton says, I knew DeMarco leaving would pull y'all out of the woodwork, make us do a show. Peyton knows us well. Let's see. Hunter says, I bet Murray has a better NFL career. Coaching professionals isn't the same, even if college men are getting paid now. Just feels like it'll be a better environment for DeMarco Murray. We'll see. Jacob says, the Chiefs hired Murray on purpose? It's pretty good. Friend of the show, Jared, says, wow, whatever will the Sooners do without DeMarco Murray? And no, Shane replied and said, hopefully get more than 3.5 yards per carry. Well done, guys.
Baseline.
Well done, guys. And also a friend of the show, Brady Trantham, says, honestly, right now, I'm thinking about the great city of Portland. Every time I come here, it gets harder to leave. Must be something in the water.
Thanks,
I don't know.
Brady. Give me one of those big checks. Give me one of those.
All right. So I know there's been some rumors. You're more plugged into all the insider stuff that you have to pay for than me. There's been one name I've been hearing for potential replacement, and that's Deshaun Foster, the former UCLA head coach who was a running back at UCLA and also in the NFL. I figure we can bring it up. I don't know if I honestly don't have any really strong thoughts aside from maybe Anyways, go ahead. I'll let you cover
Yeah, I
this.
would say so. Deshaun Foster right now kind of seems to be the consensus, and I can't say like so. Um, I know they talked about it on the Sooner Scoop podcast, and they kind of brought it up in the sense that Deshaun Foster is like the name that we've all heard. And they also kind of corroborated some stuff that you and I had heard a few weeks back as well about him maybe being an analyst, even if Murray was here. So the Deshaun Foster smoke seems to certainly have some legs to it. Whether that it mean, whether or not that's actually going to come to fruition, I think it remains to be seen. Like, I mean, there were we'll talk about the new corner coach and everything, but the guy they hired sort of came out of nowhere. Like that wasn't nobody like that guy wasn't on anybody's radar. So we'll see with Foster, but I will say if it is Deshaun Foster, that is a guy who, and I understand that he had a very tumultuous / embarrassing 1.5 year tenure at UCLA. He just did not do a good job as the head coach there. However, before he was hired as the head coach at UCLA, he was hired there because he was a very accomplished running backs coach there. And you just go. I believe he was the running back coach there from 2017 through 2023. You just go to like the college sports reference page and just look at their numbers through there. He had some good backs. He had guys who who have played in the NFL. Zach Charbonnet is the most prominent of all of them, but also Joshua Kelly, Demetric Felton, Carson Steele was a guy that he got out of the transfer portal his last season as the running back coach at UCLA, who had a really nice season. If everyone remembers, Carson Steele kind of had like a brief moment with the Kansas City Chiefs his rookie year in the NFL, and then just disappeared, didn't do anything. But he is a guy who has, as far as like a developer and having good college backs, has just far more skins on the wall than DeMarco Murray. And that's, not hard to do, seeing as that DeMarco Murray arguably did not have any skins on the wall. So, because he can't, he cannot claim Ramondre Stevenson or Kennedy Brooks. Maybe you can claim the last year of Eric Gray's career. But other than that, I think it's been swing and a miss after swing and miss. So if it is Deshaun Foster, it sounds like that would be a good hire on paper. Would it work out? I have no idea.
Yeah. Okay. No, that covers it. I appreciate the background and some of the backs that he coached and some of the success. Yeah, you're exactly right. That sounds good to me. I mean, that's better than anything that Oklahoma has had over the last 5 years. And so bringing that to Norman would be great. And I would imagine not all of those players that you mentioned were high-level 4-star recruits. Maybe they all were, but that shows a sign of developing to me.
For sure. And running back is different. I mean, of course, like there are blue chip 4- and 5-star running backs who show up right and hit hard and play really well. But there's a lot of under the radar running backs who come in and like OU's best back, Xavier Robinson, was a 3-star guy who, had a lot of like Power 5 offers and stuff, but he wasn't a blue chip recruit. And so being able to identify that is valuable. And also like I know UCLA is in like a fertile recruiting ground, especially for skill players and whatnot, but nobody wants to play at UCLA. It's a joke of a program. And so if you have success there, you have to have
Chip Kelly
some sort
of Chip Kelly was there for a bit. So
yeah, but there's very little institutional support for football at UCLA. Like, and this is probably doing like a lot of legwork here. Like, I mean, in the 2024 season, I visited LA when the Gophers were playing in the Rose Bowl. Not in the actual Rose Bowl, but they played in the stadium when they played UCLA. And it was fun, like, walking outside the stadium, all of like the UCLA fans who were tailgating are great. They're super fun to talk to, and you could tell but like they were not, they were just kind of like, yeah, we just kind of like to hang out and just come. It's a nice night. And I remember there was maybe 30,000 people at that game in like the 90,000 seat Rose Bowl stadium. And it was basically like a Gopher home game in California.
yeah.
And so it's tough to have success there. So my tendency is not to overreact to his failed tenure as the head coach at UCLA. If you go from a position coach to head coach, a lot of the time that means you're a really good position coach. And sometimes the head job is just not for everybody. And so strictly as a running back coach, I do think Foster on paper would be a good choice. We'll see if it happens.
All right. So next big news since our last show that's happened in the last week and a half or so is the Jay Valai news. So Jay Valai is out. He's on to the Buffalo Bills. And we'll talk about his reported replacement here in a moment. But I will say, let's talk about Jay Valai. My first thought when I heard this news was this. It was, well, if Valai had left the staff at this time last year, I don't think I'd have had much thought about it. I'd have been like, okay. Yet, following the 2025 season, the most recent season that saw Oklahoma's cornerback room play excellent football for the most part, multiple players. This departure does sting a little bit because it makes you think, okay, I mean, how much does Jay Valai get credit for that, and how well they played? I mean, not having Gentry Williams last year and still getting terrific play out of Guillory, Eli Bowen, Davon Jordan, and at times Jacoby Johnson seems to be some evidence of a really good coaching job by Jay Valai. But I think it's worth mentioning that prior to last season, it was kind of like with Jay Valai, it was a big kind of shoulder shrug. I'm like, the cornerback room was not nearly as consistent as we saw this past year. So that part of this kind of lessens the blow, I think. And Valai's reported replacement, I'm not sure if I don't think it's official yet, but it's been reported, seems to have a pretty decent track record. So, Grant, your thoughts on Valai leaving?
Yeah, I mean, I'm right there too. I think at this time last year, my general attitude towards Valai was essentially, because I mean, cornerback play has been a lot better than it was under the Lincoln Riley, Alex Grinch regime, but it went from being genuinely awful to just kind of okay, right? Like where they weren't being shredded by bad teams anymore. But if any team had a pulse throwing the ball, they really struggled. And then fast forward to this past season, which I thought was very obviously his best season in the cornerback room. And I think you got to give him credit for, on one end, finding Cortland Guillory, who is not a blue chip guy, and a guy who is able to come in and play really, really well as a true freshman. And also, I mean, Eli Bowen, who is also not a blue chip guy and was ready to play immediately as a true freshman. And I think you have to give him props for that. And then on the other side of the coin, too, we talk about a Jacoby Johnson guy who was very much a blue chip recruit, was a guy that everybody wanted. And the first 2 seasons on campus, not great for Jacoby J. He's kind of jerked around a little bit in 2024 with, which was ridiculous, with the wide receiver room and whatnot. But then you genuinely saw a lot of growth out of Jacoby Johnson last year. Started to play really well, started to trust his athleticism and his really great physical traits. And you got all 3 of those guys coming back this season as well. And so I thought Valai had obviously his best season as an OU coach this past year. But yeah, at this time last year, I was thinking don't we think that OU can do better than Jay Valai? And I think they're going to be okay. I do kind of like this hire. I mean, and who knows? I'm not going to sit here and say that I know a whole lot about this guy. I'm not going to lie to you. I don't. And nobody does. Anybody who says they know something about this guy is trying to just feed you content for content's sake. But I do know he comes from a really, really competent, great culture of defense. And I think that's a good start at this point in time. And he's got 3 genuinely productive corners he can work with right away. And so
we're talking about Lamar Morgan.
Lamar Morgan from Michigan.
For the first time.
Yep, thank you. So don't know anything about him other than he comes from a good defensive program. And I think that's all you can ask for at this time. I don't, you're not going to be upset that you get the cornerbacks coach. The guy coached corners when Michigan won the national title. Actually, maybe not. I think he was on staff. He was only the corners coach in 24 and 25, which Michigan's defense has been good the last 2 years. And in 2024, their secondary was very good.
So yeah, Lamar Morgan is the reported hire as the new DB's coach. And again, I was looking at this yesterday on Saturday. I'm pretty sure it's not official yet. I'm just seeing reporting, and I know that the Eichert and Lehman, I think, put a tweet out a couple days ago saying that he was going to be the next DB's coach, and he seems to have some roots at Vanderbilt, but has several years of coaching teams in Louisiana. So most recently, you mentioned he was at Michigan. You read stories about how about how Morgan, and you learn that this guy Lamar Morgan, he's pretty close with the new Ravens head coach Jesse Minter. And Minter was the Michigan defensive coordinator the year they won it all in 2023. And so Morgan has been coaching both corners and safeties. And reading the reports, reading just a little bit about him, he's supposed to be known for producing takeaways. Michigan got 13 interceptions this past season. To compare, Oklahoma only had 9 interceptions last year, and a year when Oklahoma's defense was the best it's been in a long time. In 2024, Michigan had 12 interceptions. In 2024, Oklahoma's defense, which was a lot better than it had been, once again only had 9. So Michigan's secondary has produced more interceptions the last 2 years than Oklahoma's has. And look at Michigan's most recent recruiting class. Morgan was involved in that, I would imagine, with the secondary players. It includes a couple of 4-star corners and a 4-star safety, and all of those players, all 3 of them, are listed at 6'2". So hopefully Morgan's a guy that can bring in some tall, long corners who can play some great man coverage, but also know how to play zone well, which Oklahoma desperately needs in their secondary. So overall, it does seem on paper like a good hire, but nobody knows. Time will tell if that officially gets announced here sometime soon.
Yeah, so I think an interesting, from a staff perspective, definitely an interesting last month.
Yeah,
I think there's
so
it's still set up. I mean, we'll get into it, but and like I've noticed, like other OU podcasts who are like on a weekly basis, they're trying to sludge through the off season, and there's a lot of like
tough,
what
man.
needs to happen for OU. It's like, I mean, the season's a long ways away. It's going to be here before we know it, but still a long ways away. It's like all of this is great. I think these are, whoever's in the running back room, see if Morgan is a thing at corner. It still all comes down to can John Mateer be a lot better, and that's what this season comes down to. Because I think the defense probably gonna be about as good as it was this past season coming up here. Because they have too many guys coming back where it's like there's not going to be that much of a drop off. It all is just going to hinge on John Mateer. That's literally it. Which I know it's kind of boring analysis, but we all know that that's the case.
Well, it depends on, and the key to that is, what do you want? I mean, it all hinges on John Mateer in the sense that, hey, if you want Oklahoma to make the playoff again and potentially, heck, let's start with winning a playoff game for the first time in this school's history. If you want Oklahoma to be that good, and then, heck, if Oklahoma's lucky, maybe even compete to make it to the national title game and win it all, yes, it all comes down to John Mateer, because they can certainly win 7, 8, 9 games with Mateer kind of playing similar to last year if the defense kind of plays really well. But it's like, so what? I mean, Oklahoma is here to win national titles, man. That's conference championships. So that's the thing. Is like, what are your standard? Like, what's your standard? And we'll figure out what the win total is for OU coming up here in the spring. They'll have some early numbers come out. Yeah, who knows what's going to be set at?
8.5 would be my guess right now.
So, but yeah, you're right. I mean, and we're at the benefit of, we do this podcast. It's free. We don't. It's a hobby of ours, so we're not required. We're not having to have to churn this stuff all the time, like a lot of the people we know that have to put the content out there. And more power to you guys. A lot of the content this time of year, it's just, I mean, I'm both of us were a little bit older. We're in our late 30s now, mid to late 30s, and we've seen the off season a lot. And at some point, it just gets to, it's all the same, man. it's all the same. Like, and for you out there that still love it and get into it, more power to you. I still love the actual football on the field when we get to the fall, but a lot of the off-season stuff, it's a lot of the same stuff that we do with every single year. And we'll get on here to talk about the things that we find interesting.
That's like, in a hat tip to our friends over at Through the Keyhole, but I thought they had like peak off-season hypothetical question, which I'll be honest with you, this is one that I always like, but the one where it's just like, if you could take any player from the Lincoln Riley era, like on to where we are, to add to OU's roster this year, and you can't choose Mayfield or Murray, it's like, who would you take? And I'm just like, that's just peak offseason stuff. But that's one I do like that question. That one's always fun. But the correct answer, of course, is CD Lamb or Creed Humphrey. But
wow, okay, so I did listen to that, and so credit to the Through the Keyhole guys, because typically those questions for me, I could not care less. That is a hypothetical that I find incredibly disinteresting, because who cares? However, since I was listening to it and there's nothing else to listen to, and I just kept listening, and And they brought those two guys up, and I kept listening and listening, and I realized there's a pretty big name here that nobody's saying that to me I think is the obvious answer. And then it became interesting to me. And that name is Ramondre Stevenson.
Yeah, that was the one. That would be third on my list is Ramondre.
He's definitely number one, because if CeeDee Lamb was on this team, I don't know if John Mateer can give him the ball. We saw in 2019 with Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts struggled to give him the ball sometimes.
Yeah, I think
Ramondre can get the ball easily.
CeeDee Lamb was really good with the ball in his hands, though, like at OU.
No, I know.
And so, like, you could, like, those little, like, you could throw CeeDee Lamb just like a quick little snap ball out of your hands behind the line of scrimmage, and he was able to make guys miss and run through tackles. And so, and that fits with sort of like my idea of, you know, I think, and especially in this era of college football where it's becoming more of a professional sport, you need guys who can just, no matter what, even if the defense plays perfect, you need guys who can make a play. And I think CeeDee Lamb would be like that. But also, that was for me, CeeDee Lamb, Creed Humphrey, or Ramondre Stevenson, I think, are the three that you have to think about. And maybe think about maybe Anton Harrison would be another one that like maybe you would think about, but or like Orlando Brown.
Yeah. So the reason it's Ramondre for me is because you just said it 10 minutes ago that the running back room is probably the weakest room on the roster. He would be an immediate upgrade over obviously everybody on the roster. You throw in the fact now that DeMarco Murray's gone, whether or not DeMurray was here or not, because my theory the last handful of years has been, a big part of my theory is that a big issue for the running game is mostly on the running backs, not necessarily the offensive line. And so that would put that theory to the test if Ramondre gets thrown in there. And you could say, okay, if he struggles, it's like, all right, well, maybe this is the line, maybe it's the scheme. So I would test that theory out. And I'm not saying that this guy is anywhere near as good as CeeDee Lamb, but we just saw Isaiah Satania do a bunch of great stuff last year. He's back next year. Like, adding CeeDee Lamb, it's just, yeah, your receiver room gets that much better, but your running back room still is a lot of question marks. So I think that adding Ramondre was the answer, because it immediately upgrades the running back room. With the wide receiver room, we know Satania is good, and we know that Mateer can get Satania the football. We hope that the other guys they brought in can also make that room even better, and Mateer can improve. So how about that? We ended up turning that question into a segment on our show too.
Man, Fat Ramondre was so good. I understand that he lost like 30 pounds in the NFL. He's better playing at like 250, 260 than he is. And like, I understand that he probably would have nowhere near like the endurance and couldn't take as many carries because, it's carrying a lot of LBs. But gosh, man, watching Fat Ramondre Stevenson being super light on his feet and making like elite cuts, and basically like he's essentially like Eddie Lacy, and he's fun to watch. It sucks that we only got like 7 games of like Ramondre Stevenson being the lead back in his career. But yeah, I mean, I think that was the one that when I was listening to the conversation, that was the one that was popping in my head too. It's like, God, talk about Ramondre, like criminally underrated, a super underrated player at OU.
Yeah, it'd be kind of fun to go back and listen to some of our early shows, because I know you were on Ramondre from the beginning.
Immediately.
You were the biggest Ramondre guy.
He was in 2019, and he got run in 2019, and his stats were like, ran for like, I think close to like 500 yards, like 8 yards a carry or something like that. But it was just, I even that season, and that was before Trey Sermon got hurt that year too, and they had Kennedy Brooks, who was a terrific college player. Ramondre Stevenson was so obviously the best running back on that team. And that was pre DeMarco Murray. So I mean, I think that was Cale Gundy with those rotations. And actually, no, was that what's his butt, who is
went to Texas? Is that Boulware?
Yeah, Boulware. Thank you. But
so I remember that was back. I mean, I was working at News 9 and was covering all the OU stuff, and I just remember when Stevenson started getting some run, and people started requesting him in the interview room and like media scrum. I remember his first time he came in, and it's just a media scrum. And so the player or coach walks in there, and then there's all these reporters that gather around and got cameras, whatever. And I remember he was so nervous, man. He was, I felt so bad for him. And he was like sweating, like it's hot. I mean, it's like, but he was like nervous. He was not used to talking to people and like the media. I felt so bad for the guy, because I could tell he was just very nervous, very short, like very, polite, night, but he was just so nervous. And I would imagine as time has gone on, I think I would bet that he's gotten a lot more comfortable talking to the media. But I just remember I just remember like I feel for him because like I know what it's like to be on camera, and it's the worst thing ever if you're sweating, you're outside, it's hot. I just felt for him so bad because he was just like, and just answers like, yeah, yep, this offensive line's playing really well. It's just like, I feel bad for this guy, but hey, keep playing well.
I think he's doing all right now. He's ended up having a pretty nice running or nice career for an NFL running back. So, oof.
Okay.
Anytime we can talk about Ramondre, I'm happy. Love that guy.
Yeah, great dude. All right, so next up, we'll save the Owen Heinecke thing and then also Trinidad Chambliss and all that fun stuff at the very end of the show. But before we get there, let's hit on some rapid fire news. All the things I went through the timeline. All of the next part of the show happened since our last episode. And so we'll hit on it. I don't know. I'll be honest, I don't have a whole lot of thoughts on much of this stuff because some of this stuff is like, yep, that's newsworthy. Also, don't know if it, don't care in a lot of ways. Like, we'll see. But then another example of, hey, if you're one of these podcasts or reporters that has to comment on this stuff all the time, God love you, because that's not easy. So we'll start with something that happened. I'm going to go in chronological order. So Jerry Schmidt's moving on to chief of staff role. So staying with the school, the assistant strength coach, James Dobson, is going to replace Jerry Schmidt as the head strength coach. So Grant, no more Schmitty as the head guy. We have James Dobson. So a new era in strength for OU. Do you have any comments on this?
No, Jerry Schmidt was going to retire eventually. He's a human being. Yeah. I think his second tenure at OU has been a success up to this point. I don't. One thing you can say about OU is like I don't think they've been soft. I think they're a much more physical team, and I'm sure Jerry Schmidt.
And how much of that though is Schmidt? How much of that is Venables? How much?
Well, I'm sure it's together. I think the cliche always is that the team, the guys on the team actually spend more time with the strength coach than they do any other coach on the team, even your position coach. And so like they have a really big role in setting the tone for the upcoming season, just with toughness and your ability to get through workouts and grind through all of that stuff. And so everything, I don't know anything about James Dobson. I do know he's a Jerry Schmidt guy. Like they've worked it. And so my assumption is that he is going to have a similar style. And even if Jerry Schmidt, if he's still there as chief of staff of whatever, my guess is that he'll still have a role in everything. And so time will tell. I highly doubt this is a Benny Wiley situation where, when they hired him, there were he had been to other places and a lot of like fan bases at the places where it's like, oh God, that's not a positive thing for Oklahoma. And so time will tell. I can't, and about like the injury thing with Jerry Schmidt, I still kind of feel like in Venables' tenure, OU has been very injured throughout this entire thing. I still don't feel like they have a lot of injury luck. We'll see. Maybe this will change the juju. They'll just get some good luck.
Yeah, I mean, injuries, luck definitely involved, I think, and in some instances, sometimes not. I will say a couple weeks ago, I did start trying to do some research. I texted you and said, hey, maybe a good off-season segment would be, hey, going back and looking at let's see, because Schmidt was at 22, 23, 24. So 4 years of Jerry Schmidt under Venables. Going back, hey, let's look at the last 4 years of Lincoln Riley as far as injured players, and then compared either the first 4 years of Lincoln Riley, whatever the math works out, so where it's even, and then compare the last, the 4 years of Jerry Schmidt and just see like if injuries look different, the same. I realize that's a pretty tough research project. I kind of got started on it and I've put it on pause. So if I get back to it again, maybe we'll have that as a segment. So that's one thing I wanted to mention. And
they were certainly very injured in 2024. And also, honestly, the offense was banged up a lot this past season too. I mean, Mateer was a big part of that, but that was just like a freak thing during a game. The offensive line's been beat up the last 2 years, although they've kind of, the people who were hurt in the offensive line were kind of the same people over and over again, and they are no longer on the roster. So, we'll see. But yeah, that's the thing. And like I fully admit to, like, when you talk about your team and injuries, a lot of that is like the perception that you have because you're so close to the team. And so, who's to say that other fans of other programs don't feel the exact same way? And maybe it's just Maybe it is just a whole just karmic luck thing, and maybe they're still paying for their like miraculously injury-free 2000 national championship season where not a single starter missed a game due to injury. Like, that's insane.
All right, next rapid fire news news topic. Yeah, news. We'll go with that. That happened since our last show. Oklahoma has a new athletic director. That came out a few weeks ago now. His name is Roger Denny. Came from Illinois. And Joe Castiglione is hanging him up. That's about the extent to which I really have any thoughts about Roger Denny's hire, because once again, time will tell. What about you?
Great hire. I have no idea if it'll work out. It sounds like, I mean, I think the one like analyst thing that you can say about it is that it does appear, just like based off of his background, he's only been in college athletics for like 3 or 4 years. He's got, before then he's a high priced lawyer working for like a major national law firm. Has a lot of experience in like contract law. And so I think it's pretty obvious that they are making a hire. This is a football hire, thinking that, trying to look ahead to where they think the sport is going, where it's like, this is going to be about negotiating contracts and making sure that all of that stuff is in tip-top shape. And I think, just like in the same sense with, we were talking about Jim Nagy at this time a season ago, or around this time a season ago, we were saying like, hey, it looks like OU has a perspective of what they want this role to look like. It looks like Jim Nagy, if you look at his resume, he seems to be as good of a, first get of anybody, just based off of what his track record looks like. And it looks like if college is going to go into the GM, like, section of all of that Jim Nagy was absolutely had earned like his, the first crack at it. And it kind of seems like with Roger Denny, that's the same as well. I have no idea how it's going to work out. I do know that it's very difficult to win at Illinois, and I'm thinking of just like football. And the last 2 seasons, Illinois football has had like their best 2 seasons of the last, I mean, probably their best like back-to-back seasons this century so far. And Roger Denny has been in the athletic department during that. So I if you want to point to,
I don't think he had anything to do with hiring Bielema, though.
I don't think they did. So. I don't think he did, but he's, he was. I'm most saying that he is.
Yeah, he's involved.
For Illinois to win like 20 games the last 2 seasons, which is pretty unprecedented for that program. They had to bring in some good players, and presumably they're paying some of those players, like with NIL contracts and stuff. Does Roger Denny have anything to do with that? My guess is yes, seeing as that's why they brought him in. And so I think that's the only thing that you can look towards. And for me, I get like, all I care about is football, man. It's like the softball program's cool. You guys can be elite. It doesn't, I'm never going to be sad that they lose a softball game. I'm never going to be sad that they lose a baseball game. I've been sad at times when they've lost basketball games, but this is a football school. It's now a football sport. It drives all of the revenue. That's all that matters. And I hope that's kind of the mindset that he has coming in. This is a football school. Before anything else, you take care of football.
All right, next up, because I don't have a whole lot on that. We'll see how that plays out. This next topic is it's kind of fun. It's fun for this podcast, the whole OU thing, and so the Senior Bowl happened since our last show, and Jaden Ott, of course, had an invite to the Senior Bowl, and there was some video, some Twitter vids of him going around during the practice portion of him like doing pass pro blocking and stuff, which people were reading way too far into, I think. But then the game happened, and he had 8 carries for 42 yards, also scored a touchdown, and he had 1 grab for 9 yards. And so he had 51 total yards of production and a touchdown, 9 touches in the Senior Bowl. Jaden Ott had not touched the football in a game since he got 1 carry against Texas back in October. That was the first time he had touched the ball in 3 months. Calendar-wise. So I think it's worth mentioning. I know you've made jokes about how Jaden Ott is going to get picked up, either get drafted or picked up like as an undrafted free agent and be a thing in the NFL. Time will tell if that's the case. But if that does happen, that will add that even though I think you read the tea leaves, I don't know if DeMarco Murray was like loved the idea of bringing in Ott. So I'm not sure if Murray gets all the blame for Jaden Ott. That's probably
I
more of a
do.
Jim
I
Nagy
like.
thing.
That's tough though, because like I'm sorry, that's a clown opinion to not want to bring in a good player. Your room
Again,
sucked. It's a bad room.
I don't know if that's true. I just know that that's kind of been some of the.
That's been like
rumors.
People who are connected to the program who have, who speak publicly have alluded to that for sure. But it sounds like basically, piece all of the things that we've heard about DeMarco Murray. It's like, that's not shocking that he's just like, no, I don't want to bring anyone in. And, but like, that's the thing. Like I'm perfectly willing with the whole Jade Knott situation. I'm perfectly willing to just chalk it up to it's just a bad fit from both sides. And so I think since the the news cycle of the Senior Bowl and everything, other people have talked about it, and they talked about it on Sooner Scoop, which I thought was like the most in-depth they had ever gotten into it, where essentially they said, and they were also speculating a little bit too, just based off of just things that they've heard, but essentially like their version of the story was that Jade Knott came in with full intention of being the lead back on this team. It like wasn't that he was coming in just to collect a paycheck and just like sit on the sidelines. Like one of the most interesting things that I think they said is that like during the entire summer and off season, John Mateer and Jade Knott were like working out together and doing drills and like preparing like this is our offense. And it sounds like going into fall camp in the summer, Jade Knott was the number one guy, was the lead guy. He got banged up. I think he hurt his shoulder. And the speculation is that because he had played through injury the season before and he really, really regretted it, he wanted to like heal up and he didn't want to play through that injury. And that maybe that the OU coaching staff wanted him to play through the bumps and bruises and that there was just like an oil and water situation there. And you've seen like that picture going around too of like when Keontae Lewis was down like unconscious on the sideline and the entire team was like huddled around him and Jade Knott was just like sitting on the bench. Like that stuff sucks. Like he very clearly was not engaged with everything like at the end. But and it does kind of sound like with all that, maybe Jade Knott does have like a little bit or even a lot of prima donna in him, but of course he does. He's a running back. Like and it kind of sounds like from what we know about DeMarco Murray is that he doesn't play around with that. And I'm much more of the opinion of, man, if you got a talented player who can really help you out, kiss his butt a little bit. It's not that big of a deal. Like, but also at the same time, I wish Jade Knott, once he did fully get healthy, like I wish it sounds like there wasn't a whole lot of emotional maturity on that end as well. And so it's fine. It's done. It's over. Chalk it up as just a bad fit for both parties.
Interesting. I hadn't heard that podcast. So like, let's say if all that's true, if the injury did happen and it was a shoulder, and Oklahoma was like, hey, come on, like we've seen these, like this is something you can play through. Interesting, because we talked about this in the offseason. I mean, I question like why did Ott play through his injury in 2024? It was like a high ankle sprain. And he wasn't any good. I never understood why he didn't just sit out for 5, 6, 7 weeks, get healthy, and then come back and play. But and he was asked about this stuff in fall camp, and he talked about, we tied a segment on the show about his answer, and it made sense to me. And so he may have had some PTSD of like, I'm injured again, and now if this is true and Oklahoma was trying to push him, I mean, not knowing anything else, it sounds like if that's the case, Oklahoma should have. Whatever. Now I'm just speculating, but if it wasn't that serious of an injury, why not let him heal it, miss like 6, 7, 8 games, or I don't know, because like he was done. But then again, he might just be like, I'm going to sit out and take a red shirt though too. So maybe they were. Anyway, I think when you watch him play, like I went in on this. So there was a couple of practice clips going around that you probably saw where he was pass blocking and he was. Like this guy, Twitter scouts like, man, this guy is looking great. Like, look at this block. And it's like, cool. He knows he's supposed to pass block. He's just keeping the guy in front of him. Cool. So what? That's exactly what he should have done in the fun clip of the Texas game coming around where he was asked to be a lead blocker weirdly, like on a Deion Burks like end around, and just decided not to even touch the linebacker from Texas. Like all he had to do was just at least get in his way. And not to mention that Deion Burks, his vision on the play was terrible.
I was gonna say, yeah, Deion Burks effed that play up. Like that, he just went the wrong way.
So it was bad on both. But to me, that was an example of, I mean, Ott was showing all this aggressiveness and toughness in the Senior Bowl, where was like we saw plenty of examples during actual game action of like that. Where is that? That's not happening. So it's a guy where he's trying to make sure that he has a career for himself. It's a job interview. It makes sense. So I still don't. I don't know. I don't see him being a thing. I still don't know if he's even that good. So but we'll see.
We'll see. I mean, seems, he got some pretty good reviews at the Senior Bowl. Like, there's a guy who stood out amongst the best of the running backs there. And so I was super excited about him going into last season. I thought he really was like an X factor, and was I was thinking he potentially could be the best back in the SEC going to end. Of course, that is hilarious in retrospect, but based off of just wouldn't be the first time that DeMarco Murray had upset one of his good players in the room, thus making him leave the program / do things that we don't like seeing. And so I'm okay with chalking it up to just being in a bad situation, but man, it's like crack to me. It's like, it's so hard for me not to just be like, yeah, DeMarco Murray's is a clown, guys. Like, I love him as a player, but he's pretty obviously a clown as a position coach at the college level.
Okay. The last piece of rapid fire news that's happened, just an announcement of the NFL Combine coming up. 10 Sooners invited to the Combine. That's great. I think we talked, I mean, we'll see how many of these guys get drafted. Wasn't there a thing, last year, I know in the draft and the Combine, we were like, man, the numbers are low. Wasn't it just a timing thing of,
yeah, they didn't have a lot
not have that.
They didn't have a lot of guys. Yeah.
Like a lot of guys that were eligible to go to the NFL. And so now the timing has worked out. So now Oklahoma has a bunch of older players. And then therefore now they have all these Combine invites. So
just think too, they're going to have think of all the guys. Let's say they have a really good year. Think of all they're going to have more than 10 next year. They have a lot of dudes on defense next year.
Nice.
Like their entire defensive line, Kip Lewis, the Bowen brothers. Cortland Guillory is not going to be eligible, but yeah, and they're gonna have some offensive guys too. So yeah, I think it's starting to look good from that perspective. I think it's interesting. I mean, you got Jaren Kanak getting a Combine invite is really interesting. Which he had a nice season. He had a nice season in the SEC, and so it's cool.
Jaren Kanak is just, as an athlete, he's a great athlete. Jaren Kanak can be something in the NFL. Like, I don't know what that's going to be. Ain't going to be a linebacker, I'll tell you that. But some sort of like special teams guy. Like, why not? Like, why couldn't he be some sort of bit player? They could, like, some smart offensive guys. Like, hey, this guy's got a lot of athleticism, and with the ball in his hand. I mean, we wanted the ball in his hands a lot more this past season than he had it. I mean, when the ball was in his hands, good things were happening, with the exception of with the first game of the year, I think, where he fumbled. After that, like, he had no issues with ball security, and the fact that he didn't score a touchdown at all is wild.
Still, yeah, it's wild. That was, I'll chalk that up to John Mateer just not having a good season throwing the ball. Yeah, Kanak was terrific. It's just I think he's, and for the first time, just like running routes and playing, like, I still think, in the first half of the season, he was pretty clearly OU's best pass catcher. Then, Satania had a really terrific second half of the year. But I think Jaren Kanak was, I think at a lot of times last year was maybe the second most valuable player on the offense. And who knows? Like, I think from an NFL perspective, he's definitely more of like a slot receiver. I don't know if he moves well enough to be a slot receiver, but I mean, he makes people miss. He runs through arm tackles. He's hard to tackle. And so I'm curious, like, he's not going to get drafted or anything, but he's going to get a cup of coffee. He's going to get a shot just because of how good of an athlete he is. And, he can catch the ball. And so, but I look at this list and I am certain that Grayson Halton is going to have the best NFL career out of all of these guys. That guy is a 10-year NFL guy, maybe a Pro Bowler at some point. He's so good. I think they're really going to feel his loss this upcoming year, just in terms of like the depth in the interior like that. But yeah, that guy's he's gonna get drafted probably like in third, fourth round or whatever, and whoever does is gonna get like an awesome player for a long time.
Okay, we've been doing this show for about an hour. It's time to get into what has been one of the most frustrating stories that I have ever experienced. And here's why. And by the way, I've got a lot on this, and so Grant, forgive me for talking a lot because I have a lot, and I will make points of pause at certain points for you to ask questions or jump in and give your opinion. But I just wanted to give a fair warning to that. Same with the listeners. So here is why this has been one of the most frustrating stories. I'm talking about the Owen Heinecke eligibility situation. Every college football reporter, every media member, and talking head that has reported or opined on this story has gotten this story wrong. And this includes people whose jobs are to cover college football and or have been covering football for many, many years. And yes, I will provide examples. But first, I want to clearly explain what this story is, lay out all the public facts, and then based on those facts and rules, tell you why Owen Heinecke, why he was not granted an extra year of eligibility, and tell you why that makes all the sense in the world and it's not controversial at all. and like laying it all out has not been done, to my knowledge, by any media member out there the way we're going to do it here. And we did a version of this kind of a show or two ago, but I've learned a lot more even since then. And there's been some new information, as in his petition being denied by the NCAA. So number one, let's start with what's Owen Heinecke's goal in this whole situation? To be allowed to play one more year of college football. A simple goal, right? The question is, based on the NCAA rules and Owen Heinecke's circumstances, does Owen Heinecke have one more year of eligibility remaining? To answer that question, we got to go all the way back to when Heinecke first enrolled in college, which was 2021. That's where it starts. In 2021, Heinecke enrolled at Ohio State as a full-time student. At this time, in 2021, Heineke's Division I 5-year eligibility clock started. What is the 5-year eligibility clock? It's an NCAA rule, and the rule is the moment you enroll full-time as a college student, your clock begins, and you have 5 years to play 4 seasons of competition. And get this, your clock begins whether you're playing a sport or not playing a sport. So I'll stop right there and does that make sense to you, Grant? And I know
Yes.
you know all this, but
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
And so, remember the last time we talked about this in depth on the show, I can't remember if it was last show or 2 shows ago. You were referencing the story that George had wrote for Sooner Scoop, and he had interviewed Owen Heinecke. And Owen Heinecke was kind of doing his media tour. He went on the Gabe and Teddy's podcast. And I talked about how I listened to that. And I remember, because I hadn't read the story yet, and I asked you, hey, in this story, did George mention at all the eligibility clock? Well, no, he did not in his story. And I actually went back and read that story. I was able to read it. And it wasn't, and it's true, like there was no mention of this clock in the story. And it wasn't just George. Every story you read about Owen Heinecke doesn't mention the eligibility clock. And why am I hung up on this eligibility clock thing? Because the eligibility clock is the NCAA rule that is the foundation of Heinecke's case. In order to understand Heinecke's argument, and the NCAA side of the story, you have to know the eligibility clock guidelines. And when that part of this story has been ignored by everybody, to me, that's a big old red flag. It's a big old red flag that either you're hiding something or you just don't understand how this works. All right, so to go back to Owen Heinecke enrolling at Ohio State in 2021. All right, so at that time, his 5 years to play 4 seasons clock starts. In 2021, Heinecke is on the Ohio State lacrosse team. We all know this. During his time on the team, it's been established, this has been a big talking point for everybody that's defending him. He played 3 games for a total of about 15 minutes of lacrosse. According to NCAA rules, that amount of game action counts against your eligibility. Heinecke could have played 20 games that year, been their best player, or he could have entered the 7th game of the year for a minute in game action. Both of those scenarios are exactly the same when it comes to NCAA rules. In lacrosse, appearing in game action only one time eliminates your ability to get a red shirt for that season. That is the rule. I know football's different, but that is the rule in lacrosse. Like football is like the one sport where there's a difference in the red shirt rule. All right, so Heinecke's clock starts in 2021. He plays a little bit of lacrosse. That counts as one of his 4 seasons of competition within his 5-year eligibility clock. All right, so that's 1 year. Let's go to the next year in 2022. Heinecke, he transfers to Oklahoma. He walks onto the football team. It's impressive, right? Makes the team. That's great. Good for him. However, Heinecke did not play at all in 2022. We learn that that Heinecke suffered some sort of an injury in fall camp. It's unclear if that injury forced him to miss all of the season or if he at some point became healthy enough to play, but he was a walk-on player. He wasn't going to play anyways, so who cares? Didn't matter. He wasn't going to play. No matter what, though, during this time, and this is important, hopefully during this time, Heinecke kept documentations of doctor visits, doctor opinions on his injury, because in order to get a medical hardship, which is also another name for a medical red shirt, you have to have supporting documents from a doctor during the time of the injury, and those documents have to make it clear that the doctor is saying that your injury is preventing you from playing in your sport that season. And we'll talk about why this documentation is important later on. All right, so that's 2022. Heinecke doesn't play. He gets a red shirt at Oklahoma. So to recap, 2021, Heinecke enrolls at Ohio State, plays lacrosse, 1 season down. 2022, Heinecke transfers to Oklahoma, doesn't play, redshirt year. Still, only 1 season down. So at this point, Heinecke has 3 years of eligibility remaining according to NCAA rules. The next 3 years, we can play that out. That's easy. We can play it out easily. 2023, Heinecke played in every single game for OU, primarily on special teams. That's 2 seasons down. 2 more seasons to go. 2024, played in every single game again, mostly on special teams. That's 3 seasons down. 1 to go. This past year, 2025, Heinecke once again plays in every single game, made 5 starts, was one of Oklahoma's best defensive players. Had a great year. He was excellent. And also, that's 4 seasons down with 0 seasons left to go. That's 4 competition years during his 5-year eligibility clock. So, Owen Heinecke is out of eligibility according to NCAA rules. That's it. I'll recap it one more time. 2021, played lacrosse at Ohio State. Not able to redshirt because he played in games. That's 1 year down. 2022, redshirt at Oklahoma. That's a free year. So Heinecke had 3 years left, and Heinecke used all those 3 years consecutively in 2023, 2024, and 2025. And I wanted to lay all of that out there to establish the following important point. In order to get 1 additional year of eligibility, the NCAA would have to willingly ignore their rules and make an exception for 1 player, or change the rules. And I want to make it clear that within the rules, Heinecke has no case. Within the current rules, he's got no case. And that for him to get an extra year, he and his legal team would have to make a compelling argument to the NCAA to, 1, either change the rule or make an exception for him, or find an example of somebody else with a similar situation as him that happened in the past where that person was able to get an extra year of eligibility. This is all important to understand because when people tell you that, when people say like, hey man, this situation is BS, the NCAA has no idea what they're doing, this is totally unfair, it's crazy, those people are either lying to you or are ignorant of the rules and or facts of this situation. That is where we are as far as why Owen Heinecke was denied. Grant, I will pause there for your opinion, questions, thoughts.
I thought you laid that out exceptionally well, especially when you were counting the years. Really well done. And I
have you seen that by anybody else anywhere else?
I have not. And so, but I want to speak, and this is something, and I think it was on our last podcast where we talked about this. I mean, that was a month ago. So, and I was kind of like, I was figuring it out essentially as we were talking about it on the last podcast. And then I think by the end of it, I finally had like the aha moment where I was like, oh, okay, this like makes sense. And so I think the most important thing, and you just hit on it, was that in order for Heinecke to get that 6 year of eligibility, it's a 2-step process. But it has to start with the NCAA going back to that first lacrosse year and saying, yes, like because you played football for, 95% of your career or whatever, like in terms of like actual like playing on the field, sure, we will create a brand new precedent of we will apply the 4-game redshirt rule that is only in football, but we'll go ahead and give that to you for lacrosse, even though there is no contractual or rule-based precedent for that ever to happen. That is step number 1. And then step number 2 is you have to go to that first year at OU, which he just used a regular old red shirt on that. And then you would have to rule that as a medical hardship to get his 6th year. And so because I did think early on that the whole crux of everything was not being able to get that medical hardship for year 1. And that's where that clock coming in is super, super important, where it has nothing to do with whether or not. In fact, I think by everything that we know, if that first year at Ohio State lacrosse didn't happen, he probably would have gotten a medical hardship for that first year at OU. Probably would have. But it's not, it doesn't matter though, because he's completely out of eligibility already. He's already played like those 3 seasons where he has played and appeared in every single game that season for OU are so important there, are so important. And then you go back to that first year at lacrosse, like I think people are upset because they look at the Owen Heinecke situation in the same realm, in the same world where guys are getting 7th and 8th years and everything. And I do like,
we'll get into that. We'll get into that in terms of for it too.
Sure. In terms of cosmic justice, sure, I could say that that's unfair. It's kind of silly. It's like, why do you have these rules for football and not the rules for another sport? Like they play way more games in lacrosse than they do in football. Why are you like all of that stuff in my mind in a vacuum, I think is reasonable. It's a very reasonable thing. Rules exist for a reason. We can either follow them or not. If we don't follow them, then there are no rules. And I do like, and so on one area where I will like I will validate people's feelings on this stuff, because in the NCAA's case and where we are in college football right now, there essentially are no rules. Like there's no enforcing body, and so in that sense, that's done. But like also, you don't want it to just become like some sort of massive free for all. And the rules for red shirts in every other sport except for football are extremely clear and extremely simple.
And so, and that's fair. Like, and I want to make a distinction too, because you're right. You can be mad about this. You can disagree. My only issue is that please disagree based off of the actual rules and facts. Don't just say you don't like it, it's BS, but then not understand why he got denied. Understand why he got denied, then make an argument as to why you think he should actually get an extra year, which effectively is you arguing that the NCAA should go outside of their remit to give favoritism to this guy for a certain reason. And that's where it comes down to the argument. And we talked about it a little bit on the last show, is I think, and you kind of talked about, like, yes, there's a weird thing with different years and rules, and there's different court cases and stuff. So the redshirt rules, like, there's definitely a case to be made that the football redshirt rules being different than every other sport is not fair. And that's an argument that somebody could take for this case, say, listen, like, this is not fair. Like, why is football the only carve out? It's reasonable to say, hey, like, so that's an argument that they could have made. Don't know if they did. Another one, this is probably the best argument, I think, for Owen Heinecke. So I want to get into what's Heineke's argument? What's his legal team's argument? This is what I would have done. I think this is unless like some lawyer knows more than me, which they probably do because they're lawyers. But here's what I like. If Owen Heinecke chose to sue the NCAA, and we've seen this, we'll talk about Trinidad Chambliss. It's possible that Heinecke and OU and his team could find a sympathetic judge that would consider the argument of, hey, the redshirt rules are not really fair. it's reasonable to say that this first year of lacrosse, he didn't play all that much. It should be given a red shirt, even though technically the rule states that if you play a little bit in lacrosse, you can't get a red shirt. But I think an argument could be made, and some judge might be sympathetic to that. Like, for example, there's been some examples of former JUCO players suing the NCAA to retroactively not count their years at junior college against their eligibility since that recent rule change of the JUCO rules to discount college years. And some of those players have won their case. In fact, actually, I was looking up Justin Harrington. How about that name? Harrington won a case, a JUCO case, to get even more more eligibility to take away his JUCO time. So I don't know if Heinecke's going to choose the litigation process. I don't know.
It sounds like he's not. I think it's going through, like, they're doing the official appeal right now, just like through the NCAA. And I think dude's is gonna be at the combine in a week. So it's like, it's at a certain point he's gotta, it's not gonna happen. He's gotta, like, I gotta go get ready, because he's a guy who can play in the NFL, and he's got to get ready for that. So I do think the JUCO stuff is interesting. Joey Aguilar, I know, is kind of going through like litigation and stuff
I'm very curious to see how that goes.
And
I
think
ruling on that probably.
I think there's probably much more wiggle room there to like argue stuff, because there is an official rule on the books now that JUCO stuff doesn't count anymore. Whereas, like, I think, like, let's say in 2024 the NCAA came out and said redshirt rules for all of the other sports are now exactly as they are for football. I think technically within the rules, Owen Heinecke still wouldn't get that redshirt, but I think on appeal, they'd have a really good argument and probably a way to get to that point. But that's not the case. The rules are still the rules. And I still think the most important thing is if the NCAA went back and granted Owen Heinecke that redshirt, they would be forced to change the rule. There is no, like, an exception there would not be reasonable. If you do grant him that year of eligibility, you do have to go and change the rule entirely, and it would affect a lot of people.
How many people would be disenfranchised by that ruling that were in a similar situation as Heinecke for some reason over the last, 5 years, that I'd love an extra year, but I can't, so I'm not going to, and they find out that this guy gets one. They're like, well, what the heck? I could have gotten an extra year. That's what that opens up a can of worms that people don't think about. They just think about the one thing, the one issue. It's like, no, there's actually more to this. Gosh, I was going to hit on something else, but no, you made some really good points there. Yeah, the Aguilar thing, I'm curious to see how that goes. JUCO. Okay, so next thing, the complaint that you hear by, and you brought this up a moment ago, media members, mostly fans, will bring it up. Like, you'll see some headline, so-and-so gets a 7th year, so-and-so gets an 8th year of eligibility, and people are like, man, like, people are getting 6, 7, 8 years, and Owen Heinecke can't even get a 5th year to play, a 5th year of play. And on the surface, this seems like a totally valid complaint, right? Because you see, like, this guy, like, he can't even get a 5th year of competition, and this dude gets 8. However, when you dive into the cases, case by case, all these players getting these extra years, the NCAA is granting these extra years all within the scope of the rules. And I have one example for you, a recent one, of a really popular player that came on this year from Miami. We just saw him playing in the playoff, Mohamed Toure. And he recently received an 8th year to play next season. So he's eligible. And that's, like, crazy. Like, how dare the NCAA do this? That's ridiculous. Owen Heinecke deserves not even just 1 more year, but 2 more years. No, nobody's arguing for that. But the thing is, Toure had a case based on the NCAA rules. And this is where I get so frustrated, because it takes a little bit of time to do a little bit of research. But when you find this stuff out, it makes sense. But it's easy for people to just see stuff and be like, oh, this is stupid. Guys, these guys are getting extra years based off of the rules. Heinecke does not have any sort of part of the rule book to where he can get an extra rule. Here is Toure's timeline. And I don't want to take too long, but Toure started in 2019. All right, so the eligibility clock, that's a long time ago. 2019, right? That's crazy. He played at Rutgers, played in 2 games, gets a red shirt. All right, that's a free season. His 1 red shirt is done in 2019. Still got 4 years left to play. 2020, played 9 games for Rutgers. But what happened in 2020? We all know. COVID. 2020 turns into a free season for everybody.
Everybody. And it does not count against your clock either, which is
Correct.
2020 was free for everyone. Not free for all, no rules.
Yep, and that's a big reason why we're getting to see all these crazy numbers because COVID people are in there.
It's
like,
a
this
calendar
is not going to happen
fluke.
again.
It's a calendar fluke.
It's a calendar fluke. Yeah. Okay, so Toure had been in college for 2 years. Nothing against him. He still has all of his eligibility left. 2021, played a full year at Rutgers. So 1 year down, he's got 3 left. 2022, his 4th year of college, 2022, tore his ACL in spring ball. He missed all of the 2022 season. I would imagine he had the documentation, like torn ACL, that's easy to prove. Boom. Medical redshirt. Another free year. So he's been in college for 4 years. He's only used 1 year of eligibility. He's got 3 left. 2023, he comes back from injury, played a full season. He was great. He was one of Rutgers' best players. All right, so 2023, 2 seasons down, still has 2 more to go. So in 2023, he still had 2 more years left where he could play in 2024 and 2025. So 2024 comes. Tears his ACL in fall camp. Cosman miss all of 2024. He gets another medical redshirt. So that's a free year. So let's just recap. That's a lot of years. So Toure had been in college now for 6 years. But based on the rules, he still had 2 additional years of eligibility remaining. Based on the rules. That's the key thing. It's all within the rules.
Let me step into, just because we talked about the clock a lot with Heinecke. If you get a medical red shirt, it does not count against your clock.
Thank you. So yeah, it extends it. It's a free year. And you want to argue, and I'm definitely somebody, you learn a lot of these. A lot of this 8, 9 years, it's because guys get hurt and they get medical red shirts. Now, I would totally be open for a debate of, should players only get 1 medical red shirt for college career? I kind of think so. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous that you keep getting hurt and you keep getting free time. There's just one dude that plays for, I think, like Montana State or something, that's getting like a 9th year. He's only played like 2 seasons because he gets hurt like every season. It's like, at some point, dude, you got to just hang him up. You got to just hang him up.
This was the bit with Kenyon Sadiq, who is like the huge, the guy's like 25. He's been like, he had like 3 season-ending injuries where he got medical hardships for.
Gotcha. Yeah. And so that's the key. There's no, like, Heinecke, I mean, if he would have gotten injured in 23, 24, 25, missed an entire year, he could have gotten a medical red shirt and then he could have had an extra year, but he was healthy. So again, 2025, that was his past year. Toure, he played. He was really good. 2025 was only his 3rd year of eligibility. So he has that 1 more year. Therefore, that's why he's going into his 8th year of college in 2026. Guys, it's within the rule book. That's why he's getting an 8th year.
And I think when you lay it out as well as you have here, it's like, it's easy to say that, hey, it's super simple. I do want to go, it's not simple. It isn't. This stuff is, especially in COVID, threw a wrench into everything and has made everything a lot more confusing. And once guys start getting their 3rd medical hardship, you do have to start. It's like, okay, there's a lot of rules there where there's exceptions, and so it's not like a simple process. It is convoluted, and it does. But when you do lay it out like that, it does make perfect sense. It fits within the structure of everything. And listen,
for the NCAA's purposes, though, it is simple because they have rules in the book of what constitutes a medical red shirt and what you need. And you need documentation, like ACLs and stuff like that. Those are easy to prove. Now, the Trinidad Chambliss one, those are harder, and that's why that's a whole thing. And so I get what you're saying, but from the NCAA's purposes, they need to look at all this stuff in black and white. And if they're not, that's a problem for them. And there's a chance that some of these cases, they're not looking at it that way, and they get themselves in trouble. But you got to find those, though. The
Chambliss situation does seem like a situation where his documentation sucks, where it's not tip-top shape. And I think it's been since, I think it was just like a few days ago, he was ruled eligible by a judge in Mississippi, who of course who's an alum of Ole Miss. But you want to say that?
Let's save that.
You got more?
Well, yeah, because I was going to give examples of. I started this because I'm very mad at the way this has been covered. So I did say I'd provide some examples of reporters, college football pundits, and unfortunately, at least one person within Oklahoma's building that had been pushing nonsense on this story. And this is where I want to take it next, just the coverage of it. And I'm going to start with a very disappointing tweet from Jim Nagy on January 29th. And that was the tweet that everyone saw where he broke the news that the NCAA had denied Heinecke his petition. And this was Nagy's tweet, quote, "Update, OU football fans. NCAA has denied Owen Heinecke's petition for another year at Oklahoma. When other players are being granted 7th and 8th years of football, CFB governing body has ruled Owen won't get a 4th year. Evidently, this walk-on's 3 games of lacrosse at Ohio State in 2021 couldn't be reconciled. There will be an appeal. If that appeal is denied, one lucky NFL team is going to get a stud 2-contract player and an even better human being. Love everything you're about, Owen." End quote. So, had a huge problem with that tweet. Like, I get that Nagy is backing his guy. I get it. He's backing him publicly. But him using the other players are being granted 7th and 8th years of football argument really bothers me, because I just went through it with Mohamed Toure about how that happens. Those players are getting the extra years within the structure of the rule book. And Nagy mentioning lacrosse in 2021 not being able to be reconciled. Well, yeah, because the NCAA is applying the rules, and that counts as one season. I don't like when people in positions of power, like Jim Nagy, put out things like that, because it leaves out important context for this case. And then fans who don't know anything about the rules, don't know anything that we've gone over today, they'll latch on to people like Jim Nagy, who has credibility, and then they'll believe an injustice is being done here, when within the rules, it's not. And so after Nagy put that tweet out, then you got college football reporter, pundit Josh Pate commenting on the decision on Twitter saying, quote, "I legitimately have no idea what the NCAA is thinking regarding Owen Heinecke's eligibility. The more you learn about the story, the angrier you get." End quote. Just a really stupid tweet. I mean, in fact, the more you learn about the story, the easier it is to understand why it's gone this way. So seemingly everybody that covers Oklahoma football has voiced their displeasure with this. You saw Eichert and Lehman on their podcast. They haven't told their listeners the whole story. They haven't gotten into the weeds like we have. They had Charles Davis come on a recent podcast a few weeks back to talk about this story, or to hit on it. And I like Charles Davis. I think Charles Davis is a really good analyst, but his take on the situation did not make any sense. Charles Davis said that Owen Heinecke going back to Oklahoma would be a win for the NCAA, and so would Trinidad Chambliss going back to Oklahoma to Ole Miss. It'd be a win for the NCAA. Davis also acknowledged that there are rules. He just doesn't like how they are being arbitrarily applied. The problem with that argument is that in this scenario, the rules are not being arbitrarily applied. The rules are being applied properly. And using the NCAA getting a win, that's an emotional argument that has no basis on what the rules say. That's invalid. So that's not a good argument. And so that bothers me. I think rules, law, I love the law. I think it's interesting because that's what we all base things off of. If you just ignore it, what are we doing here? So if you follow any OU Beat media member, it's likely that they've voiced their displeasure for all of this, and everything that, I mean, a lot of it has just been leaving out parts of the story. And so all I'm asking is for people to understand the rules, understand this case, and if you're going to say that it's wrong and you don't agree with it, please provide a good argument as to why it's wrong and what you would do differently. That's all I'm asking. Just please understand what's going on. And that's all I have on this. Boy, this has been fun.
I don't have as much problem with the Jim Nagy tweet. I do want to say, like, it's important to get things right. Like, it's very important to get things right. And in that sense, yes, I wish everyone would be more precise, would look into this more. But also, like, there's a competitive side of it too, where it's like, I want Owen Heinecke to be on the team next year. I do, and I don't, like, I'm one of those, like, I'm past this point. I used to really care about this. I don't really care if OU follows the rules. I want to win an Addy. I don't care. And so in that sense, I'm like, I'm fine with that. Like, Jim Nagy's knows a lot of people. He's got a lot of contacts. I know when he says something like that, I'm sure a lot like he's not a dumb guy. In his head, he's trying to put pressure on the NCAA. He's trying to make the case, much more of like a public thing, so that when they do go to appeal, maybe there's an outside chance that the NCAA will like cave to public pressure, which is something they've done before. I don't know if it would be in a situation like this where it would create like a massive precedent where they'd have to change like a foundational rule in every other sport. But so I don't have as much problem with that. And I don't think like a grave injustice is happening here, because it is fully within the rules. But I can see I see why people feel like it's an injustice. Because I do think in the context of everything with the NCAA and the whole rules being applied arbitrarily and everything, I do think that's the case in some instances. I don't think it's the case in this instance. But we are in a situation right now where, just because of like the transition in the sport, and it's all mostly with football and basketball and with NIL and people being able to be, paid and everything, you're only supposed to be paid NIL for like appearances and stuff like when the contract. And that rule is being broken every single second of every single day, and nobody really cares about it. Nothing is going to happen. And so like in this world of where there are so many rules, especially in the football sense, that are conveniently ignored because they're either unenforceable or just because that's just how it is. Like, I can see why someone would get to the conclusion of, and so we're going to enforce this rule, even though like you have and so like I understand from that perspective, but it's more of like just a fun college dorm room argument than it is where it's like the rules are very, very clear here, and it's the most logical and well put together argument, the one that you've already laid out. Whereas the other stuff is more of just like gosh, all of these rules are already kind of made up, and so this is the rule that they're choosing to enforce. Like I understand that aspect of it.
So sure, I'm trying to. It just okay. Put it this way: it happens that in this sense, in this case, this eligibility case, and I think a lot of the eligibility stuff shouldn't have a whole lot of a lot of gray area, because the rules are pretty clear. I mean, I've read them, I've gone over them, and in this situation where, okay, maybe some NCAA rules are arbitrarily applied, I think that may be the case with NIL, and sure, like, but those are harder to enforce.
Not with eligibility though. Those are pretty stone cold.
See, and that's what I'm getting at is this scenario with Owen Heinecke. He just happened to fall into there's nothing within the rule book that he can latch onto to try to get an extra year. Whereas these guys that got injured or guys that were around during COVID could. And just a little sidebar, it's all about timing, because Heinecke started college in 2021. The fall of 21. If you remember, the spring semester of 2021, so one semester before, that was still counted as a free year. So if Owen Heinecke, I don't know, I mean, it's just a coincidence, but he
lacrosse was a spring sport. I guess he wouldn't have been there though. He was in high school in the spring of 2021.
Yeah. So it's just like he missed where the COVID stuff stopped by a semester. And if he had got it a free year and he's playing, that's just a weird coincidence. So it's just, yes, it's unfortunate that in this scenario there's not a rule to get around. But it's like, yes, sure. But if you're mad about it, fine. If you're mad about the NCAA, here's the challenge that I have for people is when it comes to eligibility, find me the case where the NCAA arbitrarily applied the rules. I haven't found any yet. And I promise you, if Owen Heinecke's legal team and school, if they could find one, they would have used it. Said, what about this? That's my problem, is like you have to find that precedent case. Owen Heinecke, this could be the precedent case for this certain thing, maybe, unless it's happened before, but I doubt it. And so that's another reason why it's like, it's just, there's not a good argument for it. And like, believe me, I'm all for trying to find ways to do things. And I'm with you. I'd love Owen Heinecke to be back in Oklahoma next year. And I think you made a good point about Jim Nagy and his public pressure. I mean, if you want to get cynical on it, that's part of his job.
I'm fine, man.
Sure.
Jim Nagy's job is to help OU win football games. Owen Heinecke would help them win football games next year. You do what you got to do to try to get that guy eligible if you can.
It's just, man, It just bothers me that there's so many fans out there that think that Oklahoma's getting screwed here, and they're not. OU's not getting screwed. And it's just, and whatever, it's people's opinions and stuff. But now we can move on to the Chambliss thing, which is super interesting because here's the good news for Owen Heinecke. And I alluded to this earlier in the show, talking about Chambliss briefly, but based on what we just learned in the Trinidad Chambliss situation, Owen Heinecke has a pathway. Again, I don't know if he's going to do this, but he has a pathway to sue, find a sympathetic judge in Cleveland County, in Norman, and potentially get a judge that likes his appeal, likes the argument, like, hey, man, I don't think this makes sense that the redshirt rules are differently applied here. Like, that's not fair. Let's put an injunction on this kid and allows him to play in 2026. That's certainly a possibility. That could be an avenue if Owen Heinecke wanted to take it that far.
But even then,
I essentially saw a version of that with Trinidad Chambliss.
It's a slippery slope, though, because Trinidad Chambliss, his initial petition was denied. His appeal was also denied, which means that tells me, and he's claiming, right, that he's gone through the full thing. He had a full redshirt year, just like a regular redshirt year, and then he's competed in 4 seasons. And he is and there's an extra year there where he didn't play. I'm not sure if he didn't play at all, but probably but he's saying that he was injured and there was something there that didn't. It's now come out since then that the season in which he's trying to get that extra year of eligibility, he had tonsillitis or something like that. So it wasn't it wasn't an injury per se, and he's already been denied 2 separate times. So the NCAA is, and this is me putting the pieces together, his documentation is probably not any good. It sucks. It's probably just yeah, man, this is a bridge too far. You're trying to sell us something that's not actually there. And where you're right that might be an avenue where they get a sympathetic judge and everything, but this is still a totally new thing, because who's to say? Because if I'm the NCAA in this situation and I'm an institutionalist and I want to uphold these rules and we feel like we have ruled properly based on it's gone through all of the right avenues. He's got the things, the documentation's not good enough. That's what I'm speculating. And we have said within these rules that this guy's not eligible for a 6th season. And if I'm an institutionalist and I want to argue that, if I'm the NCAA and this judge is saying that he's eligible or whatever, if I'm the NCAA, I come back and I say, all right, sure, play him, except none of those wins are going to count in the games that he plays. And so you can, and then from there, it's just a totally different Pandora's box. So even if Trinidad Chambliss plays this year, who's to say the NCAA is not going to say, it's all right, Ole Miss just went 0-12 because they played with now, would that matter with seeing as that the college football playoff is actually an invitational that has nothing to do with the NCAA? We'll see. I don't know, but that's a whole other new precedent thing. And so that's where I'm just that's kind of that's a slippery slope for sure, where I'm sitting here, it's I still I don't want OU to have a great season. And even if they are invited to, and retroactively, all of their wins are vacated or something like that, even though that gets into the whole thing of okay, the NCAA, what sort of enforcement arm actually is this? Because even if they say that none of this stuff is eligible, who cares what you say? Because they don't have any, because this isn't a professional sport where all of the owners have come together and there are contracts that have been collectively bargained and agreed upon and can be enforced through civil court and civil law. That's not the case with the NCAA right now. There are a lot of institutions that have varying degrees of vision of what college football should look like, and nobody's agreed on a single thing. That's what the NCAA from the football arm is supposed to be. It's supposed to be all of the athletic departments agreeing on a single thing, but all of us have eyes and we see what's going on, that there is no agreement, and it doesn't really seem to be a whole lot of enforcement thing, or that's the theory with a lot of these lawsuits that are happening too. So it's the sport is going through a radical degree of change and transition. And I think the Owen Heinecke situation gives off the appearance that it is part of that, but it's not. The Trinidad Chambliss thing is, though. That is part of this change because I think we talked about this before we started recording. Part of that sympathetic judge, when he said he ruled this guy is eligible, he specifically mentions in there that this guy stands to make money this year, and the NCAA is standing in front of this guy making, and so
Yep.
it could be. I think they're just, this is me putting on my very amateur law hat. They're making some sort of like antitrust determination, and that could be interesting. That's one of those things where it's like you just laid out all of the stuff that would be within the letter of the law of, you know, the bylaws of NCAA, like eligibility rules. That's one thing where it's like, what, you know, the law is not like, the law can be interpreted in a lot of ways. And there's a lot of really smart people who can look at stuff and kind of get it to fit how they want. And is there someone who can make like a really compelling antitrust case for Trinidad Chambliss's thing? Probably. Or at least one that makes sense, you know, in a vacuum. So I do find that stuff interesting. It all comes back. This is me, old man yelling at clouds. It all comes back to me of the concept of amateurism was extremely simple and easy to understand. And once you open up Pandora's box, this is kind of what happens. I don't love. I mean, I love this sport a lot less than I did 5 years ago. I still I still follow it religiously and everything, and the sport's never been more popular. So who's to say that, or like, you know, how can I say that this thing has been largely injurious to college football? I don't think the dollars and the eyeballs bear that out. But I also know that people who have made college football a big part of their lives, I know a lot of fans, people who genuinely find meaning and community in this stuff. There's a lot of people who don't like the direction that college football is going in. And so, we'll see. But yeah, I was always the big one of like amateurism, super easy to understand. And there's like, and we haven't even touched in like, and I think these rulings, like the NCAA is kind of one on these, I'm talking the college basketball ones where the professional players have come back and actually played in games this year, where it's like, in my mind, I was like, so that's the Pandora's box that you opened. And it's,
well, not really, because the NCAA, I mean, they were always against that. And it was always with Betty Acco from Alabama. The fact that he was even given like a temporary injunction originally was ridiculous. That, I mean, and thankfully that another judge was like, no, this, I mean, because he had signed a contract. I mean, he was like a pro, and that's like explicitly, and the NCAA was like, nah, you can't do that. And so that's been finally a reasonable judge was like, nah. So he's done.
I do think though that you can reasonably say that college football players are being paid right now. It's a weird system with like the NIL and everything, but it's effectively, they're just being paid contracts anyway. And so it's a professional sport. And so who's to say, like, I think it's reasonable, right, for all of these athletic departments to come together and say, these are the rules of our professional sport, and you only have 5 years to play 4. Like, that could happen, but I don't think that's like, but that's not, especially with all of the contracts and everything. Like, I think that was only technically enforceable within the bylaws under amateurism. And as soon as you start getting paid, amateurism is dead. It's not there anymore. And so I think that opens up just a lot of interesting legal questions. And I'm not saying, like, I don't think, you know, I don't think we're going to see like a huge rash of people trying to play, like, genuinely just trying to have a college football career of like a decade long. I don't think that's really going to happen, because you still stand to make way more money in the NFL. But I do think that it opens up that possibility that people are going to poke and prod at those limits and those rules to see how far they can stretch them. And we'll see.
That's fair. That's reasonable.
Mm-hmm. That's all to say. It was much better when people were being paid with McDonald's bags under the table. The system worked better, period.
I did want to get back real quick, just the Chambliss thing, because I had a couple things I want to hit on. So you mentioned the medical documentation. That's been likely an issue. And so I did want to read real quick. I thought Ross Dellinger from Yahoo had a pretty good story on this after the ruling, and just a quick paragraph about Ferris State and the medical records. So this is from Ross Dellinger's story from Yahoo from a few days ago. The root of the denial has gone mostly unreported, but here it is. This is the NCAA requesting documentation from Ferris State, where Chambliss was in 2022. That's the year in question was 2022, where he's trying to get the medical red shirt. And here's what happened. Committee members from the NCAA requested to see practice logs from Chambliss's 2022 season as a way to determine the severity of his illness. However, since 2022, Ferris State has switched operation systems that archive practice logs. The records were lost or were so difficult and costly enough to obtain that they never made it to the committee. End quote. So real convenient how the records were not available. I remember the NCAA had like had a statement on Chambliss, I think weeks ago around the playoff time, saying that I think they had testimony or at least a letter from like a coach saying that they were always going to redshirt Chambliss that year. So here's my thing with the Chambliss thing. I think either one of two things happened in this case. Either number one, the judge ruled based on emotion and didn't care to apply NCAA rules. That's one. That's one. Or two, the NCAA themselves set themselves up for an embarrassing failure. And that's certainly possible as well, because here's the thing. If you're the NCAA, it would it could be both. I mean, if you read the stories, the judge took 90 minutes to give his ruling. He sermonized for 90 minutes.
He's an Ole Miss guy too. Like this isn't.
He is.
Both things could be true in this instance.
Which to me is man, like kind of what a blowhard. I mean, you had 90 minutes to give your ruling to talk about how the NCAA worked in bad faith on this eligibility issue. Like that could have taken you 5. So, but he ruled. But if you're the NCAA, to me, like it makes zero sense to continuously deny Chambliss a medical redshirt for one season if the NCAA did not have an airtight case for doing that. And allowing this to go as far as it did, all the way to court, knowing that you had a bad case would be incompetent. The Chambliss thing is interesting. We've gone enough. All right, so guys, let us know where you disagree on the Owen Heinecke thing, if at all. What are we missing? I feel like I've looked at every single angle of this, man, and I've reached out to some people I trust, and it's just I'm kind of disappointed with what I've heard, but everyone's got their own opinion. So if you think that we're missing something, let us know. All right, anything else real quick that you want to hit on? Nope.
No, that's all I got. Into the long off season. Hope everybody likes Olympic hockey. Not much going on right now.
All right. Yeah, but it is mid-February, so we're going to operate with future episodes that we will record them when necessary. I know that best practices are to have a consistent release schedule. We're going against that. Sorry. I just say, please make sure that you're subscribed to the show on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, so that whenever a new episode drops, we'll let you know. So until next time, for Grant, I'm Lee. This is West of Everest. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you subscribe to the show. And if you want to help us spread the word, please leave us a 5-star review. And also, tell all of your friends who are OU fans about West of Everest. You can listen to this podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, and SoundCloud.